everyone from Paris. It's Nobody Asked Us with Des and Kara, presented by Brooks Running. But today we're a trois because we have Chris McClung with us. Chris,
Hey.
Everyone who's loving us, kicking out these episodes, give this man some love because Des and I record and then we move on and Chris does all the hard work. So we're super pumped to have Chris chatting with us today. And also we want to shout out our Special Olympics sponsor, who I know we keep saying is carrying us through the games, but we mean it. This is not just an ad read. This is like the most legitimate thing that I've ever hawked. So thank you, Ketone IQ, for legitimately keeping us going during these Olympic Games. Chris has been the champ of our pod, and we thought it'd be cool to have him on to, because full disclosure, we are a team. It's not just Des and I, it's Des and I and Chris, and we're constantly on a text thread, updating each other and talking and talking these events through before and after. And so it feels like we need to have Chris on. Can
I piggyback on that? Full disclosure is I needed a night to not have to go to the track and go to bed at 3 a.m. So I stayed back yesterday and I was like, I'm going to have a nice quiet meal. There's only, 2 finals. I'm going to take a breather. And then I got a text from Chris, OMFG, Rooks. And I was so mad. So I came back and watched and rewatched, but Chris saw it happen in real time, so he had the quick reaction along with your commentary.
So Chris is working, coaching, dadding, and doing our pod, and watching everything at the Olympics, women's soccer. He's on top of every single sport. So honestly, Chris is getting less sleep than us.
Yeah. It's possible. But look, I've done the Olympics. I went to Beijing in 2008, saw every session of track and field morning and night, was very, very rabid fan there. So I know what it's like to do what you're doing, Des, and it is hard. I don't know what it's like to do what you're doing, Kara. I know it's another level, but it is so hard because even just to go and be a fan, you've got the morning session that runs 10 to 1. Then you get a break till 6. Then it's 6 till 10 or maybe even 11. You get out of there. You got to eat. You try to get back to sleep, but you're running on adrenaline of the crowd and everything else. And you can't. And so inevitably you're in bed at 2 or 3 and you're getting some sleep, but it's just not great. And so I know what it's like. I know how hard it is. So it was okay that you took a night off, Des. You need your energy for the rest of this.
And even then you can't sleep. I was let off early last night. I was released at about 11:30 and I got back and then I was just wide awake and I still ended up going to bed around 2, even though I was like, this is my night. Because I'm only going to get 2 hours of sleep before both marathons. I've already been warned by my producer, by my team, Ketone IQ. Thank you so much for sending me so much product. And I'm like, this is my night. I'm going to sleep 10 hours and it's going to average out. Wide awake.
Yeah.
The texts Kenneth Rooks. The texts were rolling in late, and I mean, I'm glad you got to sleep in. I was up early, do a little recon, so there's always something.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah,
there's always something. Trying to feed. Everyone's doing something.
I know Des. We'll get into that later, but huge info seeker today, which is super helpful. So I think we should obviously start with the steeplechase, but we talked about this over the text. We do want to hit the way that Girma's fall was covered / not covered, right? We just want to speak to that for a moment. So I just want to say that we saw the fall. Obviously, in a race with it's not 200 meters because it's a steeple, but essentially 200 meters to go. If someone falls, we're not going to go back to them while the race is still going on. We're going to watch the final. And obviously we had American leading off the water barrier and leading off the turn. I mean, you have Soufiane El-Bakkali grimacing. When is the last time we saw that? And probably who the hell is this that I'm taking down right now? Everyone's just what the hell? And I can't wait to talk about that. But we aren't going to go back during that time. During that time, what nobody saw, and I asked to see it later, and I honestly kind of regretted it, was that I'm not going to go into too much detail, but Girma's body was not doing well. There is no way A, we're going to show that on television, and B, we're going to pretend that we know what's happening in that moment at NBC. It would be irresponsible journalism, and it would be so unfair to him to show that footage. My producer wouldn't even show it to me on my screen. He made me go to ISO, which is this tiny, tiny screen, smaller than an iPhone. As soon as I saw it, I started crying. So I just want to say, of course, we noted the fall, but we are not going to be irresponsible. And we weren't going to go back and show the fall because we knew now that it was a very serious situation. So we're not going to go back now and show the fall over and over again because we know something is developing that's very serious and very scary. And out of respect for him and his health and his welfare, we are not going to glamorize that moment or try to make something of that moment. So I know there was some criticism that we didn't go back, but look, we're talking about real people here, and we cared. We cared a lot. We rolled off the air and our entire team was asking for updates, trying to get updates. He was at the hospital trying to get updates, and you guys can jump in wherever, but we're not going to go back and show that stuff. And also, as an American broadcasting network, we had a moment to celebrate. So yes, we're going to note the fall. We don't know what's happening. It's not our business to say. And also, Kenneth Rooks just won a silver medal, and we're going to make sure he has his moment. And it's very conflicting. Live television is very, very difficult. If you remember the football situation a couple of years ago, all of the athletes surrounded him so that people like us weren't just staring at him in what could have been a blast moment, and certainly was a horrific moment. We weren't going to blast that on TV. Okay, you guys go.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, you can't guess in that situation. You don't
No.
want to make assumptions, and you certainly don't want to just stare and wait and see what could be an even worse moment that follows. So, I think that's like maybe I'm wrong. It seems like it's TV 101. Like, with an injury, you're not making any guesses. If you don't know, you wait. And then when you have all the information, it sounds like you guys were able to get that throughout the evening and then put together something for prime time. Like, how did that information come in?
Well, we didn't have anyone in the hospital. The Guardian actually was the one that was like updating in release. And so even then, NBC doesn't feel comfortable because they don't
Right.
have
It's not
absolute
there. Right.
confirmation. And so for me, I was going to bed almost 2 a.m. and everyone was texting me because I was upset. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. Not the fall, what happened after the fall. And everyone was saying all signs are good. Now, how serious is the injury? I don't know. The latest news is his neck is fine. There still might be a leg injury. But that's what I was worried about. Full disclosure. I felt like we just saw someone with a serious neck injury and in a sport that we all love so dearly that we consider relatively safe.
Yeah.
It was very jarring for me. I'm not a person who follows a lot of sports where injuries, I don't follow football. And so it was very upsetting to me, and I'm just so glad he's okay. And so, but throughout the night, I'm just getting texts of what we're hearing from other reporters. NBC is not going to report that. I'm sorry. Until we have confirmation from either Girma himself or his federation, we're not putting anything out there. That, just as Des says, that's 101. We're not going to do that. And we didn't skip over it. We noted it, but we also knew behind the scenes it was very, very dire, and we were not going to I can't even think of the word, but we weren't going to try to get viewers off of that.
Makes sense. It's well
And
put.
Tirico came back to it in prime time, which I appreciated. Showed a photo of him in the hospital. You may have seen that or may have already
I
been in
didn't. I
bed.
was asleep.
Yeah. Okay.
But so that I appreciated. That was really at the very end of the night for prime time was an update on his health. And it seemed like at that point, everything was trending in the right direction, which is good. But in the moment, it was scary because I've seen that kind of body reaction before in football where somebody gets tackled really hard and they go limp and you
That's
can tell
right.
they're not moving and they're unconscious. And so in real time, that's what I saw with his body where, he went over the barrier, he hit the ground, immediately wasn't moving, and there were people jumping over him to continue the race. And so you knew, mental note for me was I've seen that reaction before to a body getting hit hard on something. And that was scary. But then obviously you're on, the camera goes on and you're watching Rooks hang on for silver. So
Mm-hmm.
you didn't know, but you knew it was serious. And I think, I mean, this is live TV. I don't think anybody understands what it takes to be able to make those decisions in real time and to make the right ones. So, you're doing the best you can with the information that you have. And, I don't think anybody should criticize that.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that like it's okay. Like not everybody understands how TV works. I certainly didn't know back in the day. But as soon as Kenneth Rooks got that American flag and was jogging around the track, we're off air. That's it. Bye. Like maybe we'll be able to revoice some things in the next 4 or 5 hours for prime time and maybe not. Like the Girma information wasn't there yet. So we can't be like, well, can we just NBC give us 20 more minutes? We want to see if let's vamp for a while. Like television, that's television's rolling on. Now we're going to whatever it is on your local station. So it was really upsetting. I'm glad to hear he's doing better. And now I want to flip it and talk about the positivity of that race. It was so awesome. So so you may or may not know that I get to choose who is introduced at the beginning. And I was like, it has to be Albacale because he's going after history. It has to be Girma. He's the world record holder and 4-time global silver medalist. And then it was like, do I show Kibawat or do I show Rooks? And Kibawat's the bronze medalist from last year. The Kenyan, that's the podium from World Championships last year is those top 3. But I was like, you know what? I think Kenneth Rooks is going to run a PR. I think he has a shot of being in that top 5. What a story that would be for like, a guy who's like relatively, and my producer's like, whatever you want to do. Like, we'll do whatever you want to do. And also he's the only American in the final, right? So there's always something special about that. We want to bring attention to just how, distance runners are stepping up left and right this meet, but it is very hard to make these global finals. So, we do our introductions and I'm always shocked that everybody knows Albacale is going to sit in the back. He's going to start to move up with 600 to go. On the last lap on the backstretch, he's going to move up to second place. And off the water barrier, he's going to take the lead. This is what happened in Tokyo. This is what happened in Eugene. This is what happened in Budapest. And I'm always shocked that it's not just like from the gun, someone just freaking blazing it. Right. So, Chris, you saw it. I felt like Ethiopia was trying to pull it along a little bit, make it an 8-minute race, but not making Girma do any of the work. And Albacale was just like a little shadow on Girma, like, this is the guy I have to outkick. As long as I'm behind him, I'm going to be fine. Because we've seen him sit even further back in the pack for a long time, but he was mid to front pack the whole time, but he never passed Girma.
No. Well, and the other thing, Rooks was actually taking a page out of his book in many ways. He was sitting at the back. Yep. I think 4 laps to go. He was dead last coming through that finish line. And I remember thinking, what's going on with him? Is he okay? Is he hanging in there? It didn't seem like the pace was that fast. That's one thing I think with the Ethiopian athletes, they need to get on the same page here about these tactics. We saw it in the 10K. They tried to pull off something similarly, but it seems like the idea is there, but the follow through is not, because it's
what lap are you taking? How fast are you taking it? Like they're literally conversing during the race. You go now, right? It's like, guys, get out your pen and paper.
Figure this out.
Plan it out before you go out there.
Because they were stringing it. They were stringing it out, and then all of a sudden they stopped, and then it kind of bunched back together, which gave Rooks the chance to kind of move up. And I don't know. I would love to know if that was his tactic, was to stay back and then move up later. But it seemed like he was operating both on instinct and planning. And I would love to know how much of instinct and how much of planning came through to get that silver.
Yeah, from my perspective, they were running right about 8-minute pace, and then they ran they were at 8:14 pace, and that's projected pace. So that doesn't mean they were running 8-minute pace and all of a sudden they ran a lap at 8:14 pace. That means they ran a lap at probably like 8:30 pace, right? And that's when we saw that giant bunch. That was like with 2 to go, and I was like, oh man, someone might fall here. And that, I think, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him, but for me, that's where Rooks was like, Rooks had said, I'm hoping that it's a wind up so I can finish hard. That's how I feel most comfortable. And I don't know, but it seemed to me like it bunched like this. And he was like, heck yeah. Like I was here now I'm really, really in it, and I still have something to go. And he said afterwards, like, and I just saw these quotes literally right before I hopped on the phone with you, but he said, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to take the lead and try to shock everyone. And he did.
He did. I mean, 500 to go to 300 to go. That 200 meters, he was somewhere mid-pack, 8th or 9th, sitting behind Girma. I think El Bakali had somehow fallen behind him at that point. And he just moves up on the outside. And once they cross that finish line, he makes that move and suddenly gaps the field by 5 meters or so. I mean, it was a full gap. And they were all looking around like, who is this guy? It was
They were
insane.
completely caught off guard. It was a little bit like the 1500. El Bakali and Girma, they are used to this. This is the last 3 years. Now the 4th year of them looking out for each other, and this little American guy that they've never heard of because he doesn't race on the Diamond League circuit takes the lead and not only like moves his way up and is like, oh my gosh, I'm leading the Olympics, is like, catch me if you can. It was so awesome. And it electrified the crowd. It electrified our booth. And it was like clear. Rooks and it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear until that barrier on the backstretch where Girma took that fall. But when they were headed towards the water jump, it was clear Kenneth Rooks is going to get a medal. What color? I don't know, but he's getting a medal.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he had that element of surprise, like you said, with the 15. And those two have been keying off each other. They know the tactics. So he had the advantage to be able to sit back. And I do think you're right. Like he was able to regroup in that kind of bunching section. And if you have your legs with one to go and you haven't been running in the Diamond League all year and you are pretty fresh, that element surprise goes a long way. I mean, that's kind of a Whiteman Kerr. That's what they've done to Ingebrigtsen too, is just get that jump and then they have to respond to you all of a sudden. And I think the factor of it being someone they didn't know, like I don't know what he can do because I haven't seen much from this guy. What is his strength? Changes everything in that last lap.
And that's why I think they didn't go with him initially. They're like, okay. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, he gapped them,
Right.
And I can't remember the last time I saw Girma grimacing. He's always running in like, yeah. He was like, oh my God. It was so amazing. I mean, he deserved to win, but it was amazing to see him like realize, oh, I'm not going to win this for sure. Like, it's not for sure. It was crazy.
Yeah, you saw El Bakali questioning himself in that moment,
Yes.
right? You were
Yeah,
like,
that's perfect.
oh, maybe not today. And Rooks was doing the exact opposite. The guy you would think would have those questions and the doubts and like, do I belong here? Like he just looked like he belonged, which is super exciting. I mean, I feel like at the beginning, after the prelims, it was like, well, this is an experienced group.
Right.
They're learning. We're probably not going to be talking about them much. Like, yes, you put him in the intro because you want to talk about the American, but after it spreads out, like, do you have that opportunity? Well, you're going to be talking about him a lot from now on.
That's so true. Like if you would have asked me, I would have said El Bakali, Girma, a battle for bronze between Ethiopians Freyu and Kenya's Kibawat, and then Kenneth Rooks is fighting in that pack 5th, 6th, 7th. That's what I would have thought. Mm-hmm. But I mean, thank you, Kenneth Rooks, for proving me wrong.
I also love the fact that he didn't settle for a medal, coming down that home stretch.
He got passed by Kibawat.
He got passed and he came back. He didn't just let go and say, oh, I got a medal. He didn't settle and he ran all the way to the line and leaned and got it. I mean, that could have been a moment where he said, man, I'm just happy to be here. I'm good. I don't need to press the line, but he did. And
these are the moments where I wish Des and I were just calling it unfiltered, because I'd be like, and Kibawat looked over and was like, what the fuck's happening? And then was like, what the fuck is happening, when he pushed again to pass him back?
Yeah. And they're doing this all over barriers.
What's happening? Yeah.
They're doing it all over barriers too, which is always mind-blowing, where they're just on the absolute limit. But I do think Girma's fall, I mean, again, scary situation, but they all panicked once he got that gap. With 250 to go, and they're approaching that second to last barrier before the water jump. And I think it got Girma out of his rhythm because he wasn't used to chasing like that, and then just misstepped and caught his foot, looked like, and then kind of came down awkwardly from there. But that honestly was, I think, significantly caused by Rooks's move and the fact that they were all just like, holy shit, what do we do now? He's
Yeah,
got
I
a
mean,
gap.
that's what Trey Hardy, who calls the field, that's what he thought. He said, I think there was so much panic in that final half lap that people weren't thinking about their form over the barriers because they were like, oh shit, because he had a gap. And they were like, oh wait, what's happening? And we don't have a lap and a half to go. We have a half lap to go. And sometimes then other things, when you're thinking about your form or this or that, you're not paying as much attention to it. Although Des was doing some recon last night, hardcore. She was like slowing down the video, and it did look like you tell Des because you were the one that found it.
No, I think it's either there's something going on injury prior. I can't wait to hear this report. And this is where we can guess, right? Like
Right,
because
right,
we know
because
he's
we're not
okay.
on live
We're
TV.
not on
Yeah.
air. It's fine. Yeah. But it looked like I think he was out of rhythm because the way he hit that bear, like it wasn't like he tagged his foot on a trail leg. Like he hit mid shin. So the timing was off. And if you like slow-mo stuff and play it backwards, you can always see what looks unusual a little bit easier. And you could watch his, I believe it was his left leg, just almost fold in a little bit uncomfortably. And then he didn't get his right foot really into the ground on that next step. And so he went over just like a little out of sync, which sort of explains why you would hit mid shin and not like tip of the toe.
Mm-hmm.
It was all out of sync. And I don't know if that's being uncomfortable and chasing, just out of sorts, or did that fold of the foot, was that like an injury that happened before and then he comes down hard because he's out of sync because of the injury. But
Right. I mean, he looked so effortless before. I think it's probably a little bit of what Chris is guessing. And again, we're guessing here, but just that it took them so off guard that they were almost in panic mode. And then I think, yeah, you nailed it because you sent us that still. There was an awkward step before he went to his next step, which was to push off and go up and over the barrier. And I mean, that was a bad, 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 bad hit, man. It was
yeah,
bad.
it's just not a fall that you usually see, right? Like
Right.
little clips of the foot. But it was just like these guys are pros. They don't
Right.
hit shin of their trail leg.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the other part about this is, everybody was keying off those two, Girma and El
Mm-hmm.
Bakali. I mean, Girma was, even though he wasn't in the front, he was third or fourth most of the race. Everybody's keying off of him. I mean, El Bakali's keying off of him. Even Rooks was keying off of him once
Yep.
he moved up. Everybody's keying off of him. Everybody thought this was going to play out a certain way. And it seemed like the whole rest of the field had conceded gold and silver to those two runners and we're just running for third place. And keying off of them, they're like, okay, if we're close to them, we can maybe go for a bronze when it's time. But Rooks said, no, I'm going for the whole damn thing. And I love that. I just love that. This is why we race, like on paper. I remember thinking, should I even watch this? I'm multitasking. Everything's going on. I almost texted you guys. Do we think Rooks has a chance? But I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, no, he doesn't. I shouldn't even ask. That's a dumb question. And then, of course, I watched it anyway because I'm a hardcore fan. And here we have the moment.
Okay, so I asked you guys to let me in to have a little chat here, and the Olympics is not the time for my anti-doping brain to be turned on. The Olympics is the time for me to really enjoy the sport and help sell it so that the next generation has opportunity, and the Americans have really helped me do that. But I can't even believe I'm going to go here because this is not a place where I wanted to go here, but I saw a lot about it too good to be true 9-second PR, and I just want to back up because I'm the most cynical person, the most, because I've seen the worst of the worst. I know it. I've lived it. So I can't even believe I'm going to do this because I feel like this isn't the time, but I'm going to anyway. I just want to tell a little story about this man named Kenneth Rooks. Now, do I have blind spots because he's American? Of course. If I told you I didn't, I'd be lying. But a year ago, this guy had just graduated from the NCAA. He was NCAA champion. He enters the U.S. championship, his first ever U.S. championship. He falls 2 minutes in, and then on the last lap goes from 7th to 1st to win. Okay? This guy's a gamer. Then he goes to the World Championships. The biggest media he's ever run is the U.S. Championship. Now he's at the World Championships. He's admitted he gets so nervous. He was so nervous before every race here at the Olympics, at the Olympic trials. So nervous at the World Championships. Makes the final. Then this year, he's injured early in the year. He doesn't go run the Diamond League. He's injured, right? He's coming back. He's finally healthy. He's strong. He's not the leader at time-wise at the U.S. Championships. I think he was behind Hillary Bohr, but he is like the second fastest guy, I believe, coming into the meet. He wins the U.S. Championship. Remember, he's training with James Corrigan, who gets third at the Olympic trials. Now, after the prelim here, remember, and then 6 days after that final, James Corrigan goes and runs 8:13, the fastest time by an American this year. Well, aside from Hillary Bohr. But he goes and he runs under the Olympic standard, right? I'm going to credit Let's Run here. They talked to Corrigan after the prelim.
Good job.
Inside joke. I'm going to credit Let's Run here. They talked to Corrigan after the first round of the steeple, and they say, does Kenneth beat you in workouts? And he goes, beat me? He decimates me. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, if James Corrigan can run 8:13 and Kenneth Rooks is, by Corrigan's own words, decimating him in practice, Rooks is probably ready to go 8:09, 8:08. And Rooks hasn't been in a race at this level before. And again, I want to remind you, the pace went from 8:01 to 8:14 with 2 laps to go. That's not 1 lap at 8:14 pace. It's a lap way slower. So, sometimes things are too good to be true, and I agree, but sometimes things are great. And sometimes people rise to the moment, and sometimes people were prepared for the moment and snagged it. And I believe that's what happened here. And Kenneth Rooks and I don't even know him. He doesn't need me to be his mouthpiece. But yeah, I mean, sometimes that's what makes sports beautiful for me. And so I guess I just wanted to say that. Thanks. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
How can you not be romantic about track? Love it. Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen any of that. I think, Ed Eyestone's group has looked great across the trials, marathon, obviously the track. They push each other, and you see people when you have a big group, like that's the whole group training mentality. You match up with guys who are running really well and you beat them every day. They have a big moment and you go like, why not me? And that connects the dots for me. You see what Corrigan did, and he's like, I just need the right race and I'm going to have a monster. And the clock wasn't in the equation. It was just racing.
Mm-hmm.
I bet if you asked him right after, like, do you know what time you ran? Like, no, I know I got a medal.
Yeah,
he probably had to look it
you're
up.
right. He had no idea, I'm sure.
I mean, I can't even imagine the adrenaline and everything else that was coursing through him when he realized he was leading the Olympic final with 2:50 to go by 5 meters. I mean, I can't even imagine. So there's no way he was thinking about the clock. He was going for that finish line.
Yeah. That's when the times happen. That's when
that's the magic, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap on the steeple. Huge congratulations to Kenneth Rooks. And Des said it on the pod twice now, I think. Grant Fisher got the momentum rolling, and now we're just continuing to see that happening. You got to think the women in the 1500 from the United States are like, it's our turn so soon. Semis tonight. I think we have a great chance of all 3 Americans going through. And as Des said, that it's a numbers game, right? You get 3 women in that 12-person final. No, sorry, 15-person final. And that's going to be epic. I do have to say, did you see now there's 22 men in the final of the 5,000?
It's too many. It's too many. That's no good.
I mean, the Olympic field size was 38. It was supposed to be narrowed down to 16. And this is going to have to be revisited afterwards because that's not good.
Gee, if both of the heats were a little too big and a bunch of people
exactly.
fell and
19 people in each heat. Now we have 22 in the final. And this is championship racing. This is going to be really dangerous. And I fear we're going to see what we saw in that prelim, but it'll make it exciting.
Yeah, that race will be interesting. We were talking about that a little bit yesterday. We don't have to go into it, but I think it's funny that in that race, Ingebrigtsen's plan is the exact opposite of his 1500-meter plan.
Yeah, because he has so much more speed than anyone else in that race.
I just get to hang out.
I just get to chill, come to life, like start paying attention with 4 laps to go.
Don't trip.
Yeah. Don't trip. No.
One more thing to add in terms of the distance and mid-distance chances and sort of this, they're all believing and they're leveling up. They see someone else do it. B. Miller got into the 800 semis this morning, bounced back from a rough opening round. And so you'll have 3 Americans in the semis for the 8 as well.
Epic. That repechage coming through for B. Miller.
That's what it's for. Apparently a tough GI day on round one. So that's exactly what it's for.
Well, good for him. I mean, now he has to go back-to-back days, which is tough, but hey, we've seen crazier things.
Game.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Chris, what have your highlights been? What do you want to talk about? What has blown your mind the most?
Okay, I was thinking about this, assuming I might get this question. So I've got two things I would like to highlight. One, you've already mentioned it, Grant Fisher. The way, and you talked about it, does the way that set the tone, I think was such a key result. But the part I see in that result was just how much work went into it for him behind the scenes. I'm a running coach. I know what it takes at most levels, not at his level, to get that kind of job done. But when you think about both the aerobic strength and the speed needed to medal in the 10,000 when you've got to run 60-second laps or faster for 26 laps, and then you got to close in 55. I mean, it's insane to be even in a place where you can do that. And the training required to have that balance of aerobic strength and finishing kick to be there is just so hard. It's hard to get right in one cycle. But it's a lifetime of work from him. A lot of 100-mile weeks, a lot of double days, a lot of stuff done behind the scenes that nobody's seeing, not just over months, but years and probably more than a decade now of work. And so to have that moment, and then you have to start to believe, and then you have to develop the tactics around it and put yourself in that position. And we've seen him be close before, but not be there. But then this championship, you put it all together. And so that, to me, and then you see other people start to rise on the same things. It's a cool ripple effect because that guy's doing so many miles when nobody's looking, especially now training mostly alone. And it's just hard to appreciate that when you see a moment like that. You kind of think it just happened, but it didn't. I mean, it was just layers upon layers of good, solid work and working through injury and all of that. And then to see that as a catalyst for other athletes just makes it really fulfilling for me as a fan of Grant Fisher to see that ripple effect now, because obviously it's gone on to inspire others.
Wait,
so
don't
that's
pause
one
there.
thing I wanted to
Pause
say.
there.
Yeah.
Pause. I just love that you said that because, people are like, have you been crying after every race? And no, I did. I'll admit I cried for Grant. But it's because of what you just said. This is not a glamour event.
Right.
This is an event that gets love. And it's just like, I'm going to get emotional now. It's an event that you have to love. Nobody appreciates it. And it's years of work and so few opportunities. And it's buying into that event. Even the marathon, you get more love and more opportunity than you do in the 10,000. And so that the way you just articulated that, French kiss. I'm crying over here.
We'll go with chef's kiss. Don't French kiss him.
Oh yeah, you're right. Well, I'm in France, but you're right. Oh my God, it's so awkward for Amy and Adam.
You can do whatever
chef's
you want.
Kiss.
Little slip there.
Chef's kiss.
Moving on. So my second thing I wanted to mention, someone not getting their moment this Olympics, but who I think will, when we talk about Grant having close moments and then having this moment, I think another athlete who's going to have one of those sort of situations down the road is Nia Akins. She didn't make the final, and I think she should have made the final. I think she made a relatively minor tactical error, staying too far back in that semifinal. And the way Keely races, it's different in that, she's not someone who goes and hammers from the front and people just kind of hang on for dear life like Thing Mo has done, like others have done. She's someone who makes a real move, which is hard in the 800 with 200 to go. From 200 to go to 100 to go, she actually picks up the pace and gaps people and then holds it down that home stretch. And Nia was just too far back when that happened and therefore couldn't move. And then, who would think that a 158 on time isn't going to go through the final there? So she narrowly misses the final. But I think when I watched the final, I thought immediately, man, if Nia was in that, I think she would have had a chance to medal. Like, I think it actually would have played out perfectly for her. And, love Juliette Whitaker. I think she's got great potential in this sport. But Nia is someone who's thoughtful, who's smart, who also runs, I think, with good instinct, who has shown her tactical development over the trials and, the first round of the 8 here. And I think we're going to see her have a moment down the road because that's not going to happen to her again. She learned something. You could tell when she finished, she was looking at it and she was doing the math. She's like, and she knew, and she's like, and you could see her processing all of that when they were showing her reaction post not making that final. And so she's going to carry that forward and have that moment at some point. And I think, it's not a thing, Mo, we should be talking about for future medals for women in the 800. Hopefully, maybe she can pull it together. But I think it's Nia Akins for the women's 8 for US.
Yeah, the margins for error are so small at this level. And you're right, like those mistakes are not repeated because you learn that lesson once. And Nia's going to have to wait for 4 years for the Olympics to come around again. But she's going to bring that with her at every single important moment. And we're fortunate to have world championships coming up again. And you're right. I think she'll do something special. She certainly has the ability. And I think she's someone, we don't even have to get into this, but like this post-Olympic letdown, when you start thinking about those people who don't have the answer of like, what if, you can go to the finals and bomb, you can go have the best race of your life and miss your goal. But when there was more in the tank and you're left with like the what if, that's so hard to come down from. And I don't know. I'm glad she has the world championships coming up to just refocus. I hope she pauses after this, gets in the right headspace, and then ramps it up for the next big thing. Because I agree. I think she's got the ability to have that moment.
I mean, you guys nailed that. I agree with both of you. The way we saw her close at the Olympic trials, I agree with you, Chris. When I watched that final, I was like, oh man, what a bummer she's not in this because I think she would have been patient through 600. And then when Keely went to work and started to leave people behind, I was like, oh God, that would have been such a great opportunity for her. And so you guys crushed that. I mean, hopefully, like Des says, she takes this, she sets a new goal, and she is able to get through that slump quickly because she's too talented to not.
She's so smart. She will.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't Miss Pac-Man when I did that. It
Oh,
wasn't
nice.
Eat Shedding. She's kind of just like eating them up.
She's smart. I
Yeah.
loved y'all's interview with her.
Yeah.
I mean, the songwriting, as an outlet. She's also overcome, the fall from the trials before. So, she's had letdowns and then built back from it. She knows what that's like. I was also going to ask you guys relatedly, if we think Thing Mo, and maybe we shouldn't cover this because she's not here, but she and Keely are 3 months apart. They're both 22 years old, a Thing Mo, Keely Hodgkinson. And watching her get the gold, it also sort of made me think, man, I wish we hadn't crowned a Thing Mo as the next greatest thing, in track and field and put so much pressure on her. Because I feel like Keely had the opportunity to actually grow and develop and not have that spotlight, even though I'm sure in Great Britain she was getting a lot of it. And then here we have her get the gold and have this opportunity to really build to it versus the Thing Mo at 18 years old or 19 or whatever it was. We're saying she's the next, savior of track and field. And I don't think that's fair to her, but I hope it's a lesson for all of us to please not do that to people at that stage in their career. Just let them actually develop.
But that's what American media does. And I think that Sha'Carri Richardson, Sydney McLaughlin, Levrone, a thing Mo. In America, that's part of the double-edged sword of being successful out of the gate, is that now we're like, and now you get to save everybody's ass. And it's totally unfair. And I do think that Keely had a ton of pressure coming from her country. The way she ran that Olympic final, to me, showed someone that was so calculated of just getting the job done. I think next time we see her in a global final, I think we'll see her take more risks. But it was like, I have to get this done. I have to win this, or I can't go back home, Not that the UK would reject her, but it was just like, I have to get, the emotion we saw from her, she wasn't running around like, yeah, she was like, just started crying, the relief of it. But I like your point, Chris. I just wish that, we put so much pressure on a thing, Mo. It's insane. We thought this, go ahead, Des.
No, I agree on the pressure side, and then what can she do next? What can she do next? She's the savior. Obviously, the media pushing that angle. It's interesting, but do we have to have longevity? It doesn't. She had that moment without any of the pressure, and her development might have just been before. Was that lead into that game's her Keely moment? And if she never tops that, that's okay. She does you always have to be the future? Is longevity important?
I think that's a really great point. Let's just say Cole Hawker never does anything again. Did he still change the course for American distance running? Yep, he did. He got a lot more eyeballs on the sport. Hopefully we're going to get a lot more kids wanting to do it, and we're going to get a lot more people investing. Grant Fisher, I think he has a great chance at a medal in the 5, but let's just say this is the height. That's a good point. We want people to dominate. This is like a Bolt / Kenisa Bekele discussion where we saw these athletes that just were good for so long. Bekele won the Olympics, 3 times in the 5,000 and the 10,000, or twice, or maybe world champs 3 times. I don't know, but he freaking won everything forever. Same with Bolt. And they left these legacies that's what we started to expect from people. Most careers are not that long and not that dominant. That's the reality. It's like you have your moment and you seize it. And then the rest of the time, you're kind of trying to get back to that moment. That's the reality for most athletes.
I think that's the thing, is the people talking about it and putting the expectations on it have to understand that side of it too. It's
they don't, though.
The trajectory for Mo was always just it has to be like that or else it's a failure. What's the next big thing? What's the next big thing? And that'll be the expectation on every single person who had a big day here. We just talked about Rooks, and it's well, I can't wait for the next time he steps on the track because he thinks he's a gold medal contender now. We're going to be talking about him forever. And we all fall into that trap because it's a hope and potential. But if it doesn't pan out, man, getting to watch Mo for that little segment was fucking special. If she never runs again, it's no, but it was still really good. And I'm drifted really far away from Chris's point, but I don't know. I just think we put a lot of stock in longevity, and it's I'm not sure that that's even the goal. It's just to have high performance or performances. Right. And then if you can do it once, that's incredible. I don't know.
Yeah.
And Rooks will never get to shock the field like that again. So
right.
So that's changed the calculus for him going
But to Des's point, I started thinking last night, okay, this guy's been a pro for a year. He hasn't been in the Diamond League. Could he become the first American to go sub-8?
Right. It's exciting. It's what we want to do. And then the pressure comes in, right? It's just, that's what we do. It's so
not
fun.
It's not because I want to celebrate his silver and what this means. It's so incredible. But it's the excitement. I'm like, oh my God, Jagger was so close. Rooks is so much more green onto the scene. And you're right. We all do it. We all do it. Even if you're well-intended, I swear I'm well-intended, but I'm like, oh, we're going to see some 8. I don't know. Next year. I can't wait.
What's
we
next?
do it in our own careers too, right?
Right.
Well, yard here. We're like, what can I do in that field? What could I do on the London course? What could like?
Right.
It's just what is interesting, but it's like a Zen thing. We're like, let's just be,
Be
Yeah.
present.
let's
Mhm.
just be.
I
And
think
if
Simone Biles said it at some point in this Olympics in an interview. She said, "Stop asking me and us what's next. Just let us enjoy this moment." Because
yeah,
people were already asking her about LA in 28 and everything else, and she's like, "Just let us enjoy this moment." And
Also, let Simone Biles be done.
right, shit,
shows
Like,
us nothing.
shit to do.
and she's the greatest of all time. She's the oldest one out there. Let this poor woman go to bed and hang out with her husband and have a life outside of gymnastics, unless she wants to, but stop pressuring her. She already saved the sport. The US is in good hands. Look at how freaking dominant they were. Anyway,
Agreed. Okay, I took that off on a strange path. I
that's
apologize,
good
but
though, because we've been
question.
we've been so race centric. It feels
Yeah,
good to not just be dissecting a race right now. Like
like a
my
split.
track nerd brain is on so hard. Let me push up my
Yeah,
glasses that it feels good to like think outside of that scope just for a second.
it's nice. Uh, what else we got? Do you guys want to hear about the marathon course?
I do. Okay, so this is what. So I haven't asked Des, or I haven't. She knows I'm going to ask her, but Des went out and ran the course today, and I'm very curious on her thoughts, her initial thoughts, and then I'm very curious about her thoughts. No, initial thoughts first, then I'll ask you my second question.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I did not run a marathon today. I ran about 10 miles of it, starting, kind of in the city and basically going straight out to the turnaround point. So maybe from 8K to 21, 22K. And the city stuff, it sounds like where it starts out is nice and flat. That's what it seemed like. It goes along the river, and then you take kind of a turn towards a downtown area, get off the river, and it's just this gradual climb. You could kind of see the top of it, and then you get into a very tiny town, or it feels like a very tiny part of town, and the roads are pretty narrow, and it gets to a very punchy, long. I guess punchy implies that it's short, but the steepness of it felt like it would be a punchy hill. But it's you can see the top for a long time, and it kind of winds, so you lose sight of it, and you think, well, maybe it's coming to an end. I think it's about 2.5K of pretty steep climbing, which is different because typically you're getting, like, if you're in Boston, New York, it's like, okay, I just got to get to the top of this, then recover, and then the next hill comes, and then you can, use the downhill. That's not the case here. So you have a 2K, 2.5K of like just climb. And then it breaks up a little bit and kind of goes back to that traditional rolling situation. So it is hilly. It seems quiet out there. It was really residential. We left at 7 in the morning to run this, so it was ghost town. A lot of shade on the way out, but it looked like at halfway point it really opened up. So that'll be interesting. And then I did not get to the big hill, which, if I was looking at this hill on the map relative to the big hill, I did get a video of the big hill. It looks pretty gnarly. And I was with a journalist from the Wall Street Journal, and she sent a video, and she said it's crazy because you think you're at the top of it, and like you're just gutting through this hill, and then it turns, and there's another, like, a whole ascent to it. So um, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of interesting things going on out there. The other thing that a lot of people, I mean, everyone's looking at the maps and the elevation profile, but what I noticed is, Carol, where do you see the big surges in races? Like, what is the thing that causes it? Like, no one really wants to lead, but when it does get stretched out, what is it? It's the water
Dude.
tables,
Oh, right. Yeah.
right? Like
Well,
every time
yeah,
you get to
and it's
one,
not even always on purpose, but yeah, people
right?
start moving around, getting antsy. They want open lane to their water table. Yeah.
Right. So you see these big, and then you have to respond. You got to grab your drink and like group, and then try and drink it while you're recovering a little bit. The water stations relative to the hills will be fascinating because they're like, I mean, I think they're like either right on the bottom of it. So you're coming down and then like going to grab that. Like, if it stretches out, I just think it'll be fascinating. But I don't know that anyone's going to be motivated to do anything for a long time. So you're going to have a big group.
That's what I'm wondering. And by the way, is her analysis not the best? We need you on the fucking podcast. Like, God, that was so good.
I say
That
like a lot. They'll be like, no.
no, you don't. That was so good. The insight is so good. That's what I'm kind of wondering. Anyone that goes out early and tries to run away from everyone, count them out. I feel like it's going to be everyone's going to be holding back because they are fearful of this hill as they should be, these climbs as they should be. And the real racing will start after that. Now, you always have a few people that are like, whatever, I'm going to take advantage of the flat beginning and the cooler temps, and I'm going to build myself a cushion. But history, aside from Boston this past year, history tells us that does not work. And so, and yeah, so I feel like the same thing. I feel like these medals are going to be determined very, very late, and the racing is going to happen very, very late. I still think it's an opportunity for a lot of people that trained specifically for the course. You know, the world record holder, she came and saw it, and she was like, I don't think I need to change my training much. Okay. And then she said she's more worried about the heat. But this is a question I have for you. You've run Boston and New York both a lot of times. Do you think someone who's good at Boston and New York and who's focused on those, and I know what I'm thinking about someone specifically, but I'm saying in general, is going to fare better than a flat fast? Or is it just such a different course than you've ever seen that it doesn't, that you can't really make those comparisons?
I think it's too different, and I think it's going to go slow enough that it won't matter because you get back down in the city and you have a long flat. So I just don't think it's going to break up. And that's not, I mean, it's going to be like a Sunday long run, and then they're going to race off of that. So then you go back to like, yeah, who can run fast and tired legs, but it shouldn't really beat them up that much. I don't know.
If they're prepared is what you're saying, because you think they're going to go up it conservatively. And so
Yes.
you don't think it's going to take so much out of them if they're fully prepared.
Right.
Look at this.
I mean,
See, damn it, you're so good.
Even the preparation, right? Like Kipchoge was like, what when he ran Boston? Well, what did you do? Is kind of the same. But so much of the beating up in Boston is the downhill, and
Yeah.
you get one aggressive downhill, but it's not a constant beating up on the downhill. So that's going to be, I think, the catalyst for getting the race started. They're going to come bombing down that hill. I don't know if you read this in Let's Run, but they said maybe sub 4 minutes. Whatever. Yeah, downhills run fast. I don't care how fast they go.
Right, of course.
And then that's not novelty. I mean,
Wait, what?
new
Wait,
information
what?
here.
People run faster downhill? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to pick on those guys. That would
No,
make
no, no,
me
no,
that
no,
would make me
no,
laugh
no, no,
though.
no.
So yes, the downhill will run fast, braking, and I think that that's going to kick off. You know, you're going to use that
That's
downhill
going to
onto
kick
the
off the
flat.
race.
But
That's
I don't
good.
if I don't know that that's going to beat you up, and maybe if anybody has run the course and practiced that, it's like, oh, I'll let them do most of it. I'll cover half of it and then pull them back in and save my quads and my low back and whatever.
Chris, what are your thoughts? Jump in.
I'm just wondering, I think about this kind of like one of those Tour de France stages where there's a hill, but it's not at the finish, and you kind of go up and over and usually get a breakaway over the hill. And then people are chasing that down. And the question is, does it get caught or does it not get caught? Can they hang out? And usually they get caught in those kind of stages. And so I do wonder if there will be something like that where somebody tries to pull a breakaway, so to speak, hammer that climb, maybe the latter half of it, get some sort of gap and then try to hold on. But, to your point, it's too far from the finish to be able to successfully pull that off. Might create some intrigue in the moment, but is it going to be a move that's definitive? Probably not. But I do think it will create some intrigue. Maybe it won't change the outcome, but it will create some intrigue. So those are the things I think about.
This is kind of interesting. So from 20 to this must be, hold on, 20.3 to 29 kilometers is this kind of long. Well, never mind. I'm just saying, like, there's a water station right at the bottom of this very steep hill.
I
So you're
love
going to
that
go a
insight you gave us.
downhill into it, where if they're picking up, it's stretching out, and then you're going to have like you usually get a little break. And then if you get the jump on that climb, you could break away. You're right.
But you got a long way to go.
Yeah, it's too far out.
It's not like you have 4 miles to go or even 10K to go, right?
Yeah, you'd almost be stealing it.
Okay. We got to wrap this soon, but Des.
I'm going to keep looking at that.
If you just gut reaction, if you were running this, what would your strategy be? Desland in inner prime, knowing she has a legitimate chance at a medal, knowing she's legitimately one of the top 3 women in the world. What's your strategy to get that medal?
I think I would try to be honest in the flat section through almost 15K, and then be patient 15 to basically 30K until you're on the other side of the big hill. I think you really have to go by effort on those climbs and not, try to hit a certain split, do anything magical, break things up. I think you just want to save your legs, but you can put a little damage in early by keeping it honest. And then once you're halfway through that bombing downhill, I think you can start getting aggressive because it flattens out.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh gosh. Why do we need you? If the 800's a 3% call, the marathon should be.
One day we'll work on it.
Someone who is like still living and breathing it. Anyway, thanks for that insight. That's awesome. That is so cool. And it's cool hearing you. I know you ran track, but it's cool hearing you talk strategy in your event because even though I ran the marathon, I love the marathon. You just know it better than anyone I know. It's cool hearing you talk it.
Wait, one more thing before we wrap up. We were talking a little bit about the times of the U.S. men who happened to run with Rooks, who happened to run with Corrigan, Clayton, and Connor. They look great on paper, not really attached to the rest of the group, but I think the effort of this course and just the lack of like leadership or willingness to push, I think it could really favor them.
I think so too. Special. They're training up at high altitude in the mountains. They run hilly courses all the time. I think that Ed Eystone has shown he is keyed in and dialed in. And, I feel like both of those guys, I was telling you guys, like on paper, it's like they're 208 guys. And then I was studying for the marathon a little bit yesterday, and there's like so many 202, 203, 201, 204 guys in the race. But they're more calculated. I think their training's been more specific. And also they're in that position of like, nobody expects me to get a medal, but I know what I've done. Kind of like Kenneth Rooks last night. I know what I've done. And my PR isn't as good as these guys, but so what?
Yeah. I wonder what Jared Ward was on paper when he finished 6th in Rio.
Oh, I bet you did not even like maybe in the Olympics because you're limited to 3 per team, maybe in 30th, 25th. If even. Even.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap it up, we have to do an Ollie Pop top 1. We'll give Chris the first.
Chris, just take it away. I feel like this is so easy. Like the proposals are making this.
Come on. The thing though that's been awesome as a track fan about this Olympics, and I love the fact, by the way, that we have the 3-way view on our text thread of the fan watching from home, the fan watching from the stadium, and the person in the booth is sending us like photo finish pictures before they're published live to anybody else. So it's been amazing to have the triangulation of all of that in following it. But I just love the fact that each night has had a moment where you're like, oh man, I didn't expect that to happen. And it's been so awesome. And last night was obviously Kenneth Rooks, Quincy Hall too before that, but then Kenneth Rooks.
I didn't know if you were going to come in with the Quincy Hall there.
Just real quick with Quincy Hall. If anyone watched that 400 meter final, he came through 300, head back, grimacing in like 4th or 5th place. And I was like, damn, I thought he might win this thing. And then you guys watch it. He came through doing this. Head
Yeah.
back.
Oh, it's terrible.
The worst form I've ever seen. 5th fastest time of all time. Olympic gold medal. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. Talk about a shocker. Just because, you see guys in the 400 grimace at 350. They come off the turn looking amazing. And that's when they start to tie up. They don't come off 300 looking like the race is over and then win.
He hauled the bear with the piano home. He's like, it's fine. I got it. I got this. Play your song, bear. Dropped him down at the finish line.
But I remember looking at the schedule
Crazy.
thinking, why aren't they ending the night with the 400? That's what I would have expected. And then I'm glad they didn't. So Kenneth Rooks gets the Olipop top 1, hands down.
I mean,
honorable mention to Quincy Hall.
Yeah, sure. We can mention Quincy Hall because that was amazing. But Kenneth Rooks, the look on everyone's face when they realized they were gapped by someone they have never heard of, for me, will go down as one of the greatest moments of track history that I've ever been able to witness. You could see on their faces literally what the WTF. I don't know who that is. And they were all like, is this for real? For me, I will never forget that. Kenneth Rooks all the way.
Amazing. I mean, I'm not going to stray from that. He's the Olipop top 1.
Yes.
Check out the show notes. Use Nobody Asked Us code for Olipop. And we have Ketone link in the show notes for 30% off your first order and a 6-pack of ketones. Whew, thanks for listening, everyone. We're having a blast doing these.